Good evening, everyone. This is Rahul Reddy. I am a mentor at Career Launcher Bangalore. I have with me Mantrana. She has secured an All India rank of 131, which translates to a state rank of 6 for Karnataka, and also a national rank of 19 for AILET 2024. Okay. So, congratulations, Mantrana. How does it feel?
And thank you. I still can't believe this. I'm still in a state of shock at this moment because I've been practicing praying for all of these ranks for so long that it's become such a habit. So even today, when my alarm rang at 11:11, I was still like CLAT 2024 and unless I you Bangalore. It's just sinking in.
Wonderful. So, when we look at the journey, let's start right from the beginning. So, tell me a little bit about your, background and where you grew up, what school you went to, and so on, and then try to bring it to when did you decide that you want to pursue law?
So we came to Bangalore when I was 2 to 3 years old, and I spent a majority of my childhood here, except for 1 year in Pune, which was around third to fourth grade. Uh, I've mostly been into arts. I was a very creative child, and I like all the creative things as well. The thing is, I decided around seventh grade itself that I didn't like science, and by that time, my career option shifted from being a fashion designer to actually getting into something like politics or government. And when I found out that there was a field called law, I fell in love with it. A lot of my reading at that particular point was law based reading. They were all books about lawyers. And I think that really inspired me to choose law as my profession early on.
So, where did you study?
I studied in NPS HSA, and 1 year was in Pune. It was this school called St. Mary's School, Pune.
Okay. So, when did you join? You joined for a 2-year program at Career Launcher?
No, I joined the 1 year program in December last year.
Okay. Right. So, can you run us through the highlights of how your preparation at Career Launcher went?
When I joined Career Launcher, I hadn't covered a lot of the syllabus. So the first mock I gave, my score was really disappointing. But after that, we worked on each and every subject with multiple teachers. The faculty at Career Launcher have been so helpful. I remember that earlier in the months of April and May, I used to have 2 or 3 hour sessions with Shidhar sir or Animesh sir or Shehbaz sir, and we used to solve doubt after doubt to figure out what my weak points were. And a lot of mentoring came in through that. So, if you see my CLAT prep, I think the earlier months from around April to July, 75% of the time was for the other sections other than GK. And from July onwards, it shifted to 75% for GK and 25% for the other sections.
All part of a plan.
It wasn't planned that way, but it just happened.
Right. Okay. So, as you said, your initial mock was disappointing, but then the score would have gradually kept up as you prepared.
It actually stagnated for 2 to 3 months at a stretch.
Mhm.
Until the 120 format, 120 questions format didn't come, my scores were around 70 to 75 in the previous format, and
Okay.
they weren't budging for a very long time. But the minute the format changed, it gave me some newfound confidence, and my scores have improved since then.
Oh, so this pattern change actually worked out well for you. Good.
It was it was a moment, but I felt that maybe it's not all the hope that's lost, and there was still some hope left. So I worked even harder, and then the slope came in.
So, GK is definitely one area which a lot of students kind of dread a little bit. They're worried about what can come and so on. So, how did you do when you say 75% spent on GK? What did you do for GK?
I read Manthan 2.0. I felt that was a pretty good in-depth coverage of the topic, and it gave you like a 360 degrees view. I was also part of this platform which gave you quizzes on the most important topics, and that really helped a lot because it was a pretty competitive atmosphere, and you had students giving CLAT this year itself. So that really helped in not only like doing JE for the first time, but also revising it thoroughly. And then the career launcher mocks themselves are pretty helpful. Like I got to know if I was on the right line for my GK topics or not. I also attempted a couple of news canvas quizzes once in a while to check if I could remember everything I've read so far.
Then two other areas we'll take one by one. One is legal. So how exactly does legal prepare? How does somebody prepare legal for CLAT?
For me, legal was my favorite subject right from the very beginning, and I was very passionate about it as a subject. So I did the career launcher books, which we get at the beginning of the year, and then I just focused on my mock mistakes more often. A couple of ones that I figured out pretty early were the dates, which kept on changing, and in fact, one of the mistakes I made in the mock actually came in the CLAT paper, and we were revising that in the car. So I had this book in which I wrote all of my mistakes over the months, and that pretty much helped me get a good rank in legal.
So one of the things that we notice, especially in outsider notices, when they come into a career launcher center, is that legal classes tend to be very noisy. There's a lot of argument and debate and thinking. So what's the logic behind that?
It's just a way of experiencing the subject which you're going to anyways take up as a profession, and it makes the class more lively, but it also helps you kind of think logically when you solve the paper as well. A few of the questions, the options are pretty vague, and when you kind of go through those arguments in class, it's either a new way of thinking that you hadn't thought of before, or sometimes one thought kind of comes up with multiple arguments, and everyone has a different view, and then the cycle keeps on continuing. So it's just a different way of thinking. I personally learned a lot from my peers when I was in these classes because we discussed a lot of abstract concepts, and even while we were discussing legal, GK somehow came into the picture, and we had a lot of tricks to kind of remember a couple of facts there. So that really helped.
So I think that's probably an extension of where I want to go next is uh, the importance of having people who are equally motivated and probably equally hardworking, talented, and it tends to when you have a group like that, it tends to push everybody up, right? So did you find that kind of group in Career Launcher?
I did, but the person I worked with the most was my father, and he worked as hard as I did, if not more. So he used to be a constant source of motivation for me. And even in career launcher, I met a lot of people who initially had great higher scores than I had. And I used to talk to them and figure out, how they thought about the CLAT paper or how they went about their notes. And that really helped in a couple of ways. For example, one of this person who I talked to a long time ago, he said that when she studied something for GK, she Googled up questions herself, and then Google comes up with its own set of questions. So, like that, I kind of developed my base from what others before me had done. And even the Achievers Meet, which we had in Career Launcher around, I think, May last year, that really helped a lot as well.
Sorry, what was the May one? The
The
meeting.
Achievers Meet.
Yes, Achievers meeting, right? Good. So it always helps. One, it gives the confidence that look, so many of us, people like us, have done it before. I think that helps. Second, of course, they have a lot of useful tips, like the tips that you're giving right now. And this year again, we'll have that, so that while this YouTube session will take your tips to a broader audience, that session is specifically for the Terry Launcher Bangalore students, where you and all the other toppers will meet the 25 students. We're going to do this. It's an every year thing, so we're going to do that. And do let your dad know that there is no age limit for writing plat. And if he wants to write it himself, that he is welcome to do that. He probably might get a good rank.
I was convincing him to write CLAT even after the date extended to 10 December. I was like, there's still one more week, let's register. We might get the
Okay,
same center as well, but he didn't want to write the paper. He was like, it's okay, you can go write the paper.
right. Good, good. So your score is his score. That's good. Right. So coming to the mocks itself, uh, one point we've always asked is that look, for convenience, and we do offer the option of taking the mocks online. But how important is it to take the mocks offline whenever you can?
So offline, you're not in your room, you're not in your chair, and you're not on your desk. So that sense of comfort won't be there initially. And that's something which I found a bit different because for the first 2 months of my class prep, all of my mocks were at home. So the
Right.
first couple of center mocks for me were a completely different experience, right? It was a different place, it was a different environment. I wasn't used to giving a mock with a lot of people around me either. So that makes a lot of difference because even on the D Day, you're surrounded by people who are trying to get into the same schools as you are. And that feeling is something which at times it gets uncontrollable. So I feel like the center mocks really make for a good experience. And you kind of also need that. Even the St. Joseph's mocks, which we had, when I saw the crowd there, the first mock, I was actually pretty scared because I was like, there's so many people, and it was just a CL Bangalore mock. But over time, that tendency kind of reduced. So they're all pretty important in that aspect.
Right. No, that was the intent behind doing it because while center marks were offline, we wanted to show a more realistic experience of what a CLAT center would look like. And that is why we said, look, once a month at least, so 4 or 5 mocks we'll do it at St. Joseph. Feedback has been good, so probably we'll do more of that for the next batch. And so by the time you actually go to a CLAT center, you might have said, look, this is deja vu. I've seen this before.
I feel that my center was still a bit more crowded than usual because it started raining when we were about to write the paper. But other than that, it was pretty fine once we got into our rooms. It was like 24 people in a classroom. You could write your paper.
Right.
And
So you gave it at NLS?
no, I gave it at B.R. Ambedkar.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Good. So, a lot of talk about this year's CLAT paper being, what do you say? Some say very easy, some say weird, some say, why did I end up preparing so much time for GK when questions are all, answers are all there? So, how did, but I want to know what you felt when you started the paper.
So the thing is, in one of my mocks, a question, the one whole page was missing. So I was pretty used to like flipping through my question booklet to see if everything is printed out of habit. And when I did that, I saw the GK questions on topics like G20 and Chandrayaan, which were my favorite topics in my GK prep. So I was pretty confident about GK by at that point in time, and that made the English section go smoother. When I came to GK, I didn't realize the questions were from the passage directly because the first couple of topics were ones which I prepared pretty well, like Israel Palestine. The passage which made me realize that questions were from, the passage itself was the Jallianwala Bagh passage. And I was a bit shocked to see English questions in the GK section at first, but then I was like, okay, it's a CLAT paper. If I'm going to become a lawyer, there will be surprises, and it's completely fine. So that was my mindset solving that section as well.
So, how well did you manage your time in the actual CLAT exam?
So English got over pretty soon. It was lesser than the time I take in my mocks usually. GK took slightly more in the CLAT paper, but everything else balanced out pretty well. It didn't really feel like it was the actual CLAT paper because everything just went in that smooth kind of a rhythm. So
Yes, I think one of the things that differentiated people like you who did well in this exam to those possibly you could say also good students who missed out is that they couldn't adjust the time. The saving time in English, using a little more in GK, using it in logic where it's probably required, making sure they have enough time for quant. So, which brings me to quant. So, you were always good at quant or not so good in the beginning? How was the quant journey?
quant in the 150 question format for me was the section which I wasn't able to touch completely. I could do maybe one set at max, but I could never answer all 15 questions. When the 120 format came, I could easily answer about 10 to 12 questions in quant. So that made for a pretty good attempt even in the actual CLAT paper. I could solve 10 questions in quant. I think I could have solved the other two as well. So that was a regret I had minutes after the paper was over. But other than that, it was pretty good. Also, maths is one of my stronger subjects as a whole. So I enjoyed the section.
So, there are two types of students at the end of the exam. One type of students who will go talk to friends, parents, and discuss the paper. The other who will say, like, go and lock myself in the room and say, look, I want to talk about it. So, which type are you? End of
I
the
think I
exam.
was somewhere in between, especially in CLAT this time. I was a bit disappointed that I couldn't solve the last two questions in quant. I'd skipped the lengthier questions initially, and I didn't have the time to get back to that. And because the paper was a bit easy, the first reaction I had was, maybe this would be a differentiating factor. So I was actually pretty scared about the paper itself. And then when we went in the car, my parents were curious about the paper and they were like, how was GK? How was logic? And I was like, okay, this is what came. The one question which really surprised everyone was the general dire question because none of us knew his full name. And after that, my parents decided that we won't check the answer key and stuff. So it was a done deal. The paper was over. We put it in my drawer and we never saw it till the result day.
Okay, right. But you do remember the Zelensky question in the old CLAT, right? So it's
Right.
somewhat of a parallel. Of course, they're not asking for that, four word full name, but yeah, it was like which Zelensky and how do you spell it kind of stuff. Okay,
We
good.
had stepped in that direction as well. Like MM Kiravani, we learned his full name. A
Right.
lot of the GK we did was in that line. It's just that the entire Jallianwala Bagh passage came up so unexpectedly.
Absolutely unexpected. True. Right. So you didn't really check the provisional key and other things.
No, I also had school exams that week, and we had AILET on Sunday. And
Hmm.
from past experience, I'm a very result-oriented person. So if I know my result is bad or not up to the mark, it kind of consumes me a lot. So we wanted to avoid all of that, and we didn't check the paper.
Your school didn't give you a free pass for board, pre-boards because of the CLAT ILET?
No, I fell sick a couple of months before CLAT. So all of September, October, my attendance in school was pretty dismal. So we just gave the exams to kind of not lose on the attendance factor.
So you had to make up for that long time. Right. Great. Good. So, and reaction on the day when you saw the results?
Um, so it was like a roller coaster because my parents thought that the cutoff for the general seats was 144, and when they saw the 131st rank, they were so happy. But then I'd seen the brochure, so I knew it was 121. So it broke my heart to kind of say that no, the cutoff was 121 and not 131. And that's when everyone suddenly got so anxious that we called. I think my father called you the minute the results came, and he was like, "This is what's happened, so and so." And the domicile rank only came around 11, and that's when the entire house was like, "Okay, we've gotten in." That
So I remember that. I remember telling your father that it's very likely that she will make it at that time. So that was the time. But yes, you like to see it on the ground. So whatever we talk about past trends, it's only when you see that okay, it's six in Karnataka and there are 30 seats, then you say "Yeah, it's not. That's true.
those 3 hours were so. I can't describe it. Everyone was like roaming around the house. No one could really sit in one place. And everyone was anxious because it was just a 10 rank difference. And then there were rumors that the OMR wasn't corresponding with the actual CLAT marks. That's when we actually checked my CLAT paper to figure out if my score is okay and stuff.
No, there are some students who felt that there, and there some of them also filed a grievance with a scanned copy of their own marks. Let's see, but that error probably CLAT won't do because that's more of a technology error. So it's probably that they marked something wrong or didn't shade it properly is probably the only thing that we did. Another thing where doing physical marks helps. The basic things like shading the owner property makes a big difference. Good. Right. So any other things that you'd like to share for people who are going to take the exam, 25 or later?
One thing I would like to say is that it's not really worth it to take the amount of stress one day before the CLAT exam. My CLAT experience and my ALET experience were completely polar opposites. I was pretty stressed out before CLAT. For ALET, it was a very chill paper because I knew that I wasn't aiming for NNV Delhi anyways. So that kind of a mindset when you go in there and just play your natural flow is what's really important. Like I know it's hard to cool yourself down before this exam, but that's actually what really helps in getting a good rank. Because when we went through my paper, I had committed mistakes I've never done in mocks before. And after those questions, I could even answer in my sleep. So it's not really worth it to get stressed right before the exam. It's really important to take that one day off and relax.
True. I think I remember talking about that at this campus also saying that look, last week is not somewhere is something where you scale down your hours of work that you put in. And as far as silly mistakes are concerned, I think idea is to minimize. It hardly ever becomes zero. I think that's one of the reasons why I give the exam and some of the other trainers give the exam, is because it's so easy to, if a student brings a paper after the exam, I can look and say, oh, this was easy, and all that. But I'm not putting myself at least partially under that pressure, then I know that it is not that easy, right? Despite all that I don't have any pressure and I'm just taking it to understand the paper. I did make a couple of silly mistakes. One in maths, which is like laughable. The other is an OMR transfer mistake, which again is laughable. But it happens. As long as you minimize, I think that's good. You're good. Good. So, congratulations once again. I'm very, very happy. Uh, we will have a lovely get together once we collate all the numbers together. And yes, the lesser fortunate to go to other NLUs will also be invited, and we'll all get together for that event. And of course, yes, we would also expect you to directly share your tips and answer queries of the 25 students. Right? But meanwhile, yes, boards, yes, we need to get back and do a good job. Uh, very competitive school that you come from, so I'm sure they'll push you there also. Right? My many congratulations to your parents also, because they're part of your journey, and I'm very, very glad that you were a very long student.
Thank you so much, sir. I honestly could not have done as well as I did in the paper without career launcher support. Sridhar sir, 2 weeks before the CLAT exam, we were sitting and solving logic questions because I'd forgotten half my basics. And he was just so calm and composed, and he's like, "Okay, this is what we do. This is what we don't do." And he walked me through the entire basics once again. So it's just a lot of support which I received from Career Launcher. And Leela ma'am was also very helpful.
Really glad to hear that. Right? Thank you. I'll end the screen here. Right?
Thank you so much, sir.